All right, so for the next part of this discussion, we were just talking about the greater universe, and did the series finale wrap that up? And the answer is no. It didn't even. I was expecting, and I don't know if you expected this. I was expecting them to at least set up how the characters go into their own spin-offs. Like, why the hell did Negan and Maggie go to New York City? Like, Maggie is the leader of Hilltop. Like, what makes her go to New York City? um,
Yeah.
and then Daryl, is it confirmed that Daryl is going to try and find Rick? Is that why he left?
See, I think it was clever what they did, where they, in a way, they kind of gave Negan, Maggie, and Daryl their own kind of conclusive, not fully conclusive, but semi-conclusive endings in the finale, where the next time we see them in the spin-offs, they can kind of explain through dialogue what happens. Because we see Daryl drive off, and it's like, well, he says he's gonna bring Rick and Michonne back if he finds them. So we don't. It kind of felt like they wrote the ending for him before they knew exactly what the spinoff was going to be, and that was kind of their way of kind of giving that a blank slate almost, where like, oh, he's just driving off into the sunset, doing the thing he always does, where he goes off and drives around on his own, and then the spinoff might pick up and explain what happened in between the shows. I feel like it works better that way than kind of setting everything up in the series finale, because obviously not everyone's gonna continue on. Like that's that is going to be the end of the line for some people. Some people aren't going to want to watch the spin-offs even if they love those characters. And I felt like that was kind of their way of ending it for those people while still sort of teasing that there's more to come. I didn't really get that feeling as much for Negan and Maggie. That kind of felt like the end of their relationship entirely when we know that's not the case.
Well, right. That
But
scene.
Daryl,
That scene very much wrapped up. Like, I
yeah,
really felt like that scene wrapped up their story. Like, that's where where Maggie's like, listen, like there are just some days I'm not going to be able to look at you. That just felt so conclusive to me. And
yeah,
I just, for them to have adventures after, it's like, okay, that's cool, and I'm glad, because obviously, and I'm glad we're getting more continuation with Negan and stuff. But I would have been like okay-ish if that's where Negan's story ended, because you assume he just goes back to Alexandria to be with Annie and his family, and like that conversation felt like his redemption arc went full circle with Maggie. Like she's like,
yeah.
you earn your place, but I can't look at you for obvious reasons sometimes, but I respect you and you've earned your place. Like, I felt like it came like as full circle as possible, you know? So,
Yeah. And for her too, it felt like she finally got to a place where she was accepting of him being like in her group, but also like, hey, we're gonna live in separate bubbles. Like I'm gonna be at Hilltop, you'll be at Alexandria. Maybe we'll see each other every once in a while. Maybe we'll have to work together every once in a while, but we're not gonna be like friends. We're just gonna be coexisting. And to me, it feels weird to know that they're going to go off on another adventure. And based off of the little bit of footage and photos that they've released, it seems like they're still going to be fighting, which seems really bizarre to me because it felt like that was so conclusive. And it feels like that would be treading back to what all of season 11 was.
mm-hmm.
So I don't really know how they're going to work that out because I was really satisfied with that being the end for those two. And even Negan and Daryl, it felt right to have that little quick scene of Daryl looking out the window and seeing Negan and just kind of them, acknowledging each other. Like they're not going to be friends, they're not going to be, you know, family, but they're going to coexist with one another, and that kind of felt like the most peaceful resolution for them that you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just curious. Like, I don't know what, like, what would make them go to New York. I just don't get it. And I'm assuming she's not bringing Herschel. I don't think the kid is in this show, and it would be very
Yeah.
irresponsible of Maggie to bring her young son to a city full of walkers. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really think that's the smartest thing to do. Um, so I'm assuming he just stays back in Hilltop. All these poor kids, freaking Judith, RJ, Herschel, like all their parents are run off. Like, oh, just fend for yourselves. I got like things to do. So
Yeah, and that made me laugh too because even though I liked the idea of Daryl like going off and looking for Rick and Michonne, not as intensely as like Michonne left because she was obviously like, I'm not even going to be in range of the radio. But Daryl's ending to me kind of felt like, oh, I'm going to be in the area, and if I happen to come across them, then I'll bring them back. But I'm also going to be like looking for supplies, looking for other people. But it made me laugh so much that he had that moment with Judith where she literally said to him, I didn't tell you about my mom and dad because I was worried that you were going to leave. And then he literally leaves at the end of the show. Like he leaves her again.
yeah,
Um,
she was right.
like,
Yeah, Judith was right.
I mean, that's her. I mean, she seemed okay with it, but
And not only that,
it was like that's
he's gonna be going farther than any of them, which is freaking France. He's going
yeah,
to like at least Rick. We can assume he's in the United freaking States, like he's in the same country at least. When which I guess
yeah,
sucks because. And if he's in Philadelphia, that sucks even more because he's not like too far from them being in Virginia. Like those 6 years, because that's the other thing. People
yeah.
are like, how is Rick like never able to come home? Like, how is he never able to sneak away and get away and come home in all of this time?
Hmm.
My guess is there's going to be a really big time jump. Like after Jadis brings him in the helicopter, he's gonna like wake up like a few years later, like something where they had him in like I don't know, like a cryo sleep or one of their like zombie containment units or something. It's gonna like he wakes up like how long have I been out? Like it's gonna be like a few years later, so that way we can cut. And that way it doesn't seem like weird that he didn't try to escape because he was just like incapacitated for the whole time. So
Yeah, I've always thought that and having seen like World Beyond and just seeing that last scene of him in the finale, it kind of gave me the idea that maybe like the CRM knows about Alexandria, knows about his communities, and they're holding that over his head where, hey, if you try to escape or if you try to leave us or if you double cross us at all, we know where your family is and we can wipe them out. We've done it before. And I
mm-hmm.
feel like that would, I mean, I don't see him risking that just to get away, but we obviously know from the finale that he does try to escape unsuccessfully.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the CRM is probably aware of Alexandria, probably from Jadis,
But
because
why
she
don't they? I
obviously,
was gonna say Jadis knows the exact location of all of the like
yeah,
everything. Why?
yeah, she knows everything.
I was like, why? Why would they have not? Why would they have not gone there? Like, I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's the thing where like their resources, like they deal with their things, like they're not in the business of like conquering, but I don't know, like, they've already got such control over all their communities and I guess it just depends like what they want. Like why would I mean I hope the Rick series explains this, but um yeah, I just don't know why a group like it just seems irrational that like Jadis wouldn't have said something that they wouldn't have gotten it out of Rick. I don't know, maybe Rick cuts a deal. Like maybe that's going to be shown in the series. Like maybe Rick
yeah.
promises to stay if they don't go and do anything to them. Like that's why that happens the way it does. So I don't know.
I kind of like the idea of it being something like Jadis is still kind of protecting Rick in a way, and she doesn't reveal everything about the communities to like the rest of the CRM. We saw in World Beyond that she like became really brutal, obviously,
Yeah,
um,
because I'm like
in
that
between the
that Jadis
shows.
would do it. I was like, yeah, like the Jadis of World
Yeah,
Beyond seems like she would do it.
she like signed off on wiping out the other communities, but maybe just because of her past with Rick, she has like a special spot for him and doesn't want to ruin that. But I don't know. I don't know. That's something they'll have to. We don't even know for sure that Jadis will be in the show like fully. If she'll just be kind of like a guest star, or if she'll be like a big villain in the show. We don't really know how she'll fit into it all. I feel like she needs to play a pretty big role in it though. Um, but they'll have a lot of explaining to do on that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we'd need like a whole episode explaining just explaining what happened in all those years that he's been gone. Like a
I'm
full episode,
interested
not
to
just a
see.
quick little montage.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they tackle it. I don't know if it's going to be years later. I don't know if it's going to be a little while after. Like I don't know. I don't know. I can't. And then Daryl said that like he doesn't. Norman Reedus was like Daryl doesn't go to Paris willingly, so like someone knocks him out and takes him there. So
Yeah.
that's all we know about that. And then we have no reason, no understanding of why Negan and Maggie go where they go. So I don't know. I don't know really what the end game here is because like all of these stories happen after the main show ends. So like what's the true ending? Like what's the ending of everything? Negan and Maggie's story. Does that conclude alongside the Daryl show, or does the Daryl show wrap up with the Rick show? Like I always thought that like everyone was gonna like have to come together in the end. That the true Walking Dead finale was gonna be like everyone just gonna be like one big fight. Like the Commonwealth, they gotta raise their armies and fight the CRM, and Rick comes back and has to provide his knowledge of what he saw, and I don't know, Morgan comes back and brings some nukes with him. I don't know, but I thought that's what was going to build up to, like that they had set up their like their galactic empire of this show, and that they that this was all channeling towards that. So I don't know what's the end. It's like, oh, it's the series finale. Yeah, but what's the finale of what's the finale of the finale? Like I don't know
Yeah.
what the ending is now. Like which show gets that ending? I don't know. I mean, I'd have to say the Rick one probably because he's our main guy, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's so weird because it feels like I feel like all of those shows could ideally go on for several seasons, but it's almost like, do you really want all of these shows to go on for years and years and years and get no resolution? Or do you want them to close out these characters' stories, have them all reunite, and that kind of be like the whole end? And I could see them doing something like that where we get Rick and Michonne, we have them reunite finally. We have Daryl do whatever he's doing. We have Negan and Maggie do whatever they're doing. And then they kind of all build up to like one final event, like television film or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of be like the ending of that era of the show. Because they obviously, I know AMC has plans for a million different spin-offs than just these. Like I'm sure they have stuff in the works for characters that we don't even know. But they have to have some sort of end game for these main characters that are essentially the main core cast of the franchise. So that's what I hope. I would like for them to all be limited shows. I don't want like the Daryl show going on for like 5 or 6 seasons. I want that to be like a contained and limited thing where there's an end game in sight. Because if it just goes on forever, then it's like, what's the point of this?
Will they all get the World Beyond treatment, like just 2 seasons and that's it? Like,
yeah.
I
feel like that works well when they like. I think World Beyond worked well in that sense where they planned it to be 2 seasons from the beginning, so they didn't really overdo it with introducing like a million different concepts and ideas and characters. They had the limited cast. They told their story in 2 seasons. They set stuff up, set things up that would impact the other stories. They left the door open where we could see characters return in other stories, and they ended it. And I feel like they need to go into the other shows with that mindset, because that otherwise you just have a show that goes on forever with nothing
Yeah.
that it's
And
really
now it's
building
just
towards.
now it's fragmented because you no
Yeah,
longer have your core show as the main train driving the engine. Now you've got
yeah.
multiple tracks, and it's like, what's the direction? Like,
Mhm.
where? It's just like I don't. I want there to be some greater purpose that we're building towards. I don't want it to just be, oh, these are just self-contained stories. Like Negan and Maggie go freaking beat up some, some, I don't know, guy running an entertainment ring in New York and kill a few walkers, and then they come home to tell the tale. Like it's like I want something meaningful for this world, knowing that we've got a group out there trying to figure out the virus, and I still don't know what the CRM's true purpose is, what they're truly after. They're studying the virus, they're trying to do something with the virus. That has me intrigued, and the Rick and Michonne show will obviously go into that, and that's like my main. It's like, okay, that's where I've got my main interest, but Daryl in Paris, that's probably going to connect to the variant stuff, right? The final scene of World Beyond that
Yeah.
was in Paris. That's probably going to connect to the super walkers and stuff, and Daryl, trying to figure that out. But like, is the CRM involved in that, or was that like a different group that was in Paris? Like, I don't know. And
Yeah.
going on the topic of, Game of Thrones was a self-contained disaster. Their final season, but the Walking Dead was mostly satisfying. But I think it's hard to say that this was bad or disappointing because there's so many pieces of the puzzle we don't know. Because Game of Thrones wasn't going to do this. Game of Thrones, like, yeah, this is that's the it. There's no 4 spin-offs after this. Well, I guess I think there is going to be like a Jon Snow thing afterwards or whatever. So they stole the Walking Dead's idea. They're like, oh yeah, we gotta make sure people don't totally hate this story. So yeah, Jon Snow, he finds a time machine and goes back and undoes our terrible ending. But that's the real ending.
Yeah.
So it's just like the Game of Thrones didn't have that luxury. So like they had to bite their terrible ending with their limited number of episodes. Again, the same problem. I don't know what it is with these shows, and again, it's the networks. It's the networks. The
Yeah.
networks and the bigwigs make these decisions. They don't care about the writing, about the showrunners. They don't care about any of this stuff. They're like, oh, I don't give a shit that you're trying to connect these communities and this and that, and that this doesn't technically make sense. Like, we're either, they either don't want Netflix to have the AMC shows anymore because they had that deal, and now that Walking Dead's done, they can cut the deal, which is what I discussed in, like a long time ago. And so, like, that's what's driving this, and then obviously the Game of Thrones thing, those showrunners wanted to do other stuff. And, actually, and HBO came out and said that they would have been fine with multiple seasons of Game of Thrones happening after. So I think that literally came down to those two shitheads who ruined that fucking
Yeah.
show. But that's a different topic. But I just, I don't know. I'm just confused on what the plan is. Like, I don't know if it's because, like, I don't want it to be like Star Wars where these are all just like mini stories, because that's what I feel like, as I said in the previous part, that's what I feel like they're trying to do. They're like, oh, you want to go see Daryl in Paris? Go watch this show. Oh, you want to go see Rick and Michonne, like how that resolves? You can go watch this show. Oh, you want to see Negan and Maggie in New York? And it's like, but what is the purpose? Like, because unlike the Star Wars, those all happen in different timelines. Other than maybe like Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, most of those shows happen in different timelines. Before the Empire, after the Empire, before this, after this. Like, they're all over the place in terms of the timing. But for this, all of these shows, the three, they all happen after the events of the series finale. So it's like they should be connected in some way. Like, you'd give due diligence to your fan base by doing that, you know?
Yeah, and it's so funny, like thinking about. I still think like it's like, why is Daryl going to Paris of all places? If he's kidnapped, yeah, that's fine, but like that's such a strange concept. And it's like when we actually see the show, they need to explain why Daryl specifically, like not just, oh, we could have swapped him out for any character. We just wanted to have a show set in Paris. It needs to be a specific reason that he went to Paris. And I think the only reason that that would make sense is if they looped in the CRM and they looped it back to Rick and had him, that be the pathway that he reunites with Rick somehow. And that be, because, like, why not have Ezekiel go to Paris? Why not have it be a spinoff about Eugene in Paris? Like, make it specific to the character. Same with Negan and Maggie. Like, you could throw any two characters together and send them to New York, but why are we specifically doing Negan and Maggie? And the business side of things, it's because, well, that's two characters that people are going to want to see together. But I have like a story reason of why it makes sense for those two to go there specifically. After the events of the series finale, and not just, well, we wanted to have them in the franchise longer.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, for me, watching the series finale, and my opinion might change with time, but I was satisfied with the fact that everyone kind of got their own individual ending, even if it wasn't like wrapped up perfectly. It felt like an ending for everyone in a way where, if that was the last we saw of everyone, I wouldn't be totally satisfied, but I'd be at least content with that. Obviously some things weren't resolved, but I would have been okay with that being the last time we ever see everyone. And if we didn't know that all these spinoffs were coming, I would have been okay with that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it was a finale. It yeah. like you just said, it wrapped up a number of things and conveyed itself as ending. They, like, the Commonwealth is secure. Their homes in Alexandria and Hilltop are secure. They've got some security. 1 year goes by, and everyone's doing okay. So it's like, all right, like, they seem to be doing pretty well. But there is obviously that nagging feeling that, like, there are still loose ends. And that's, I think, the part that bothers me, because, like, you're trying to pass this off as a series finale, and you do your best to resolve things, which you mentioned. But there's just also some things, like, because I saw an interview with Greg Nicotero. He's like, we considered not having any Rick scenes, but then we thought to ourselves, well, people who saw him fly off in the helicopter in season 9 probably would be a little confused if they only watched this series and had no, like, you had no idea anything. If you didn't have internet and you were just like, oh wait, that's it? Like, what happened to, like, you flew off in a helicopter and never came back? Like, what the hell happened? So
yeah,
you needed to at least like show that. But even so, you set up like a cliffhanger that doesn't get resolved in your own show. Like, how ludicrous is that? Because, there's the scene with Rick, the chopper finds him and he puts his hand up and surrenders. And then it cuts to that last scene with Judith and RJ looking out over the community, and then it just ends. It's like, wouldn't any person like watching that? Because again, if you knew there was a Rick and Michonne series, it's like, all right, yeah, okay, we'll see what happens to him. But if you're just watching that one Walking Dead show, you're like, wait a minute, you're saying this is the final episode? Like, what the hell's going on with Rick? Like, who's the helicopter? Like, what's he doing? Like, like the outfit? Was he a prisoner? Is he, like, what is he?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work, Like, they're trying to do something that just, like, they've backed themselves into a corner, because it's like, oh, like, we have these other shows, but, like, the show's also ending. It's like, I don't know, guys. I feel like there was a much better way to have, like, organized this. It just feels disorganized. Like, they're pulling it off in a way, but it just feels very disorganized. And again, I don't know if that's, like I said, the network's fault or like whomever, but it just feels disorganized. And that's why I'm afraid that all these spin-off shows are just going to be disorganized in their direction. Like, Is Daryl going to figure out some sort of interesting thing with the cure because of these Walker variants in Paris, or is that going to be Rick with the CRM's research? And what the hell about Negan and Maggie? What's the main driving thing in that fucking show? Like, I don't know.
And
I don't know.
It's so funny you said that about the interview Greg Nicotero did about them, debating on if they should include that at the end. Because if they hadn't, I just can't imagine, like, if you never watched any other spinoff that are currently airing, like if you didn't watch Fear, if you didn't watch World Beyond, and if you had no intention of watching the other spinoffs that are coming, you would have been like totally lost of like Rick and Michonne. But going back, like, imagine if you never watched Fear the Walking Dead or anything else. It's so funny how like the show ends and gives zero explanation about Morgan. Like, Morgan just disappears at the end of season 8. They mention him maybe once or twice, but he's just gone. And if you didn't watch Fear the Walking Dead, he's just gone with no explanation. And it would be kind of the same thing with Rick. He's just gone and there's no explanation given, no closure. That's it. So it leaves it on the viewer to seek out the rest of the story somewhere else almost, which is such a weird way of telling the story. Like, you have to actively, for Morgan's story, you have to actively go to a spinoff and follow that show for several seasons before he even shows up. And then his story continues in the middle of their story. So it's so weird how they've like fractured everything, like you said.
Yeah, it's confusing, but I think some of that I have to set aside, as much as it bothers me, because I'm still very much excited for all these spinoffs, because this is the continuation of this show for me. Like, this isn't a series finale. Like, yeah, okay, I'm sad the original show is done, but I still get this show splintered into many different subgroups and sub-shows next year. So that's something for me to be excited about, because I can't imagine if my I enjoy Game of Thrones, but it is not my favorite show. This is obvious. This is very much my favorite show, and so for people who had to watch Game of Thrones end in the complete shit way it did, and then they have nothing. Like, they have House of Dragons, but that's a prequel like a bazillion years before the events of the first show. So, like, you got nothing after that show. It's just like, yeah, this ending sucks ass and too bad. Like, have fun with it, At least, we get, like, most things resolved. We do get to see Rick, and we're going to get the resolution next year. Like that is more than anyone. I keep saying Game of Thrones, but that's just, like, the first thing that I jump to when I think about, like, a fantasy sci-fi, like drama, dystopia kind of show.
Well, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, it's almost like they kind of took notes in a way from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, where if you watch Breaking Bad, for me, I think Breaking Bad has a perfect ending. The way that ends for the characters, I think, is so perfect. But they do leave some things not hanging as weirdly as The Walking Dead does, but they do leave room for more story to be told. And then with the El Camino movie, they tell more in the future. With Better Call Saul, they tell more in the future. And then obviously the past. So it's kind of like that in the sense where, for me, Breaking Bad is a complete story. And then El Camino and Better Call Saul only add to Breaking Bad. They don't take anything away. That's a
perfect example, because Breaking Bad, I think, did it the best. Because you could watch just Breaking Bad and feel that ending was content, that it wrapped everything up, and that everything was contained within, like, you didn't need to seek anything else. El Camino, Jesse's Fate, was a nice addition. Saul and him, like what he does, because it's like, oh, like, I'm gonna go, run it. But from just watching Breaking Bad, that his life as a lawyer is over. Like, that is clear in just Breaking Bad. And
Hmm.
it is extrapolated and explored deeply in Better Call Saul, and it's an incredible show, which I think is on par with Breaking Bad. But you do not have to watch El Camino or Better Call Saul to get the full context of those stories. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's the problem that The Walking Dead has, because their show does not have that self-containing feeling. You have to seek other pieces of media that they're giving to you, because and
Yeah.
that doesn't happen in Breaking Bad, because it's as if Walt doesn't die at the end of Breaking Bad, and he rides off somewhere else, and then there's another spin-off show about Walt's future. It's like you've got like double shows, showing your fate at a different point. Like, you just
Yeah.
it's just bizarre. And so The Walking Dead's trying to get away with it because they have a larger universe to play from. But I think that's the rankings. Breaking Bad did it the best. Then Walking Dead, and then Game of Thrones. Just their ending was they character assassinated characters, Daenerys and
Yeah.
others. Walking Dead did not. Let's just say that for the finale, they didn't. Did you feel they didn't character assassinate anyone? In my opinion,
I, for me, I felt like, and I'm speaking about all the main characters, I felt like they brought all of them full circle. Even like Rosita, I felt like she had a full circle story, and her ending was, even though it was sad, it was a good ending for her within the story. Like Eugene getting his own version of a happy ending, Gabriel getting a happy ending that kind of circled back to his beginning. Like I felt like they nailed the character aspect of that really well, where everyone still felt like versions of themselves, but evolved versions of themselves.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I missed little things like Gabriel opening the gate to let those people in instead of close it. Like, that was such a cool, like, subtle thing to bring his character full
Mm-hmm.
circle. Like, a lot of characters got that.
Yeah.
And some people were like, why did Lydia have to lose her arm? And it was kind of like Aaron coming full circle with losing his, and having to adapt, and there was some of that included in there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they didn't character assassinate anyone. I think that just the world building is what's confusing. But like the characters themselves, like that was all fine. Like it was all done well. And anything that like we were discussing earlier, I just think that more could have been done. Like Lance,
Mm-hmm.
fine overall. I think like I just his ending was stupid. Like where he just tries to like shoot Carol and Daryl. I thought
Yeah.
that was really really dumb. I thought it would have been better if he got away and then like came back at the end and tried to fuck things up. That would have been a much better ending.
Yeah.
Um, but like it wasn't complete character assassination. And then Pamela like was just like a weak like we just didn't have a lot of time with her, so she was just like the staple dictator. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. Like there was no character assassinations. It was just like we didn't get a lot of time to like make this as foreboding and threatening as it could have been. So it was just
Yeah.
different. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Definitely.
but overall, I enjoyed it overall. I did, and like I said, I'm excited for what's to come. As we wrap up here, and I am excited for what they have in store. I'm gonna take this to the end until Scott Gimple said the Walking Dead universe is wrapped up. Then we can have like a breakdown. Then you could do like a Walking Dead universe video where it's like, okay, from the first episode of The Walking Dead through Fear the Walking Dead, through World Beyond, through the spin-offs, to the final episode where Rick cracks open a beer on the porch of Alexandria and says, haha, CRM is defeated. We found the cure in the CRM. Daryl found a fleet of infected dolphins in Paris. Like, I don't know, whatever. We won. We won. Everyone won. Everyone, Negan and Maggie are running like a financial bank in New York with a bunch of walkers. Like we did it. Everyone did it. And when that moment happens, then I can do like okay, like what's the whole story start to finish? But we don't have the whole story
Yeah.
start to finish. We've got a ending, but there's more to come. So
Hmm.
that's where we'll leave things for now. So so that's what I got. So
It's like a pause. It's a pause for certain characters. It's an end for some characters, a pause for some of the other characters, and then they still have a future somewhere, somehow. But I kind of like that where it's like some of them, that's it for some of them, but some of them, we're pausing them now. We'll play again somewhere else later.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the way it's the way it appears to be. But I enjoyed the course of the show. As I said, in my previous vlog, started in season 4. Um, made those review vlogs, did the reaction videos. All throughout college, and I made that video. You guys can check it out. The What the Walking Dead means to me, and I go into the whole history of how I started watching this show. And I'm not done. Like you just said, it's a pause, and this is there's more to come next year. I mean, that's what they said at the end of the finale. The end is only the beginning. So they told us that that this is not an ending. They contradicted their own finale, telling us that this wasn't a finale. Oh, the series finale. Oh, wait a minute. The end. It's just there's another beginning. Like it's like you there is no ending.
They
That's what they're
didn't
saying.
they didn't give you a second to breathe because that commercial popped up the second
No.
it was over
Yeah, it like
as the
settles.
credits were
Yeah,
rolling.
Judith and RJ are just like, oh yeah, well, this is nice. And then no, Daryl in France and Rick, like you. There's so much story. Like, come back next year. It's like, holy shit. We just, it's like okay. So
It's like don't go anywhere. Do not cancel your AMC Plus, but there's still stuff coming that you have to
I
watch.
mean, they're up against it because you have your two main shows, Better Call Saul and Walking Dead, ending in the same year, a few months apart from each other. So that's
Yeah.
kind of difficult. I don't know. I'd be interested to see AMC Plus subscriptions at this very moment now that those two shows are gone. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you for joining me as always. Wrap things up here. I'll probably, you can join me again, I'm sure, when we have more things to discuss as more details come out about these shows. Again, I told my fans my videos are going to be a little more sporadic because I don't have these shows to review as much anymore. But if there's any news that, I want to get on and talk about, I will certainly take the opportunity to do so because I do enjoy doing this. So anyway, thank you guys. And I don't know if this will just be one big video or if it'll be 2 parts. But you'll see it on YouTube regardless. So thank you all, and I'll catch you for another Walking Dead vlog. Peace out.